We have discussed 30 theoretical frameworks. Let's move on to the next. We have reader response theory, a literary approach that became influential during the 1960s and 1970s. The central idea of reader response theory is that meaning is not fixed inside a text. Instead, meaning is created through the interaction between the reader and the text. In other words, a literary work comes alive only when someone reads and interprets it. This theory shifted attention away from the author and the text alone and focused on the reader's role in the reading process. Different readers may understand the same text differently because each person brings their own experiences, emotions, knowledge, and cultural background to it. One of the most important thinkers was Wolfgang Iser, who argued that readers actively fill in the gaps left by a text. Stanley Fish emphasized that interpretation is influenced by the communities and social groups to which readers belong. Louis Rosenblatt developed the idea that reading is a transaction between the reader and the text. Hans Robert Jung focused on how readers' expectations change across different historical periods. So, in short, reader response theory argues that literary meaning is not simply found in a text, it is created by readers as they engage with and interpret the work. Now let's discuss feminist literary theory, a major critical approach that gained prominence from the 1960s to 1970s. The central idea of feminist literary theory is that literature should be examined through the experiences of women and through issues such as gender inequality, patriarchy, and the representation of women. Feminist critics ask important questions like how are women portrayed in literary texts? Whose voices are heard and whose voices are ignored? How do literary works reinforce or challenge traditional gender roles? This theory emerged in response to the fact that literary history and criticism had long been dominated by male perspectives. Feminist scholars sought to recover women's writings, highlight the women's experiences, and challenge patriarchal assumptions within literature and culture. One of the most influential thinkers was Simon de Beauvoir, whose work examined how society constructs the idea of womanhood. Ellen Showalter helped establish feminist literary criticism and encouraged the study of women's literary traditions. Helen Sixto advocated for women's self-expression through writing, while Judith Butler explored how gender is socially and culturally constructed rather than naturally fixed. In short, feminist literary theory studies literature through the lens of gender, focusing on women's experiences, gender inequality, and the ways literature reflects or challenges patriarchal power structures. Another influential approach is Black literary theory. This theory gained prominence during the 1960s and 1970s alongside civil rights movements and growing interest in the study of Black culture, Black history, and literature. The central idea of Black literary theory is that literature can be used to explore Black identity, experiences of racism, cultural heritage, and forms of resistance against oppression. One of the pioneering thinkers was William Edward Burghardt Du Bois, who emphasized the importance of Black culture and examined the social and psychological effects of racial discriminations. Henry Louis Gates Jr. made major contributions by studying African American literary traditions and the unique ways Black writers create meaning through language and culture. Bell Hooks, it was the pen name of Gloria Jean Watkins. She explored issues of race, gender, class, and power, showing how literature can challenge systems of inequality. Toni Morrison, both a novelist and critic, examined Black history, memory, identity, and lasting impact of racism through her literary works and critical writings. So, to sum up, Black literary theory studies how literature represents Black experiences, cultural history, identity, and the ongoing struggle against racism and oppression. Let's explore Dalit literary theory. This theory emerged during the 1960s and 1970s as Dalit writers and thinkers began using literature to challenge caste discrimination and bring the experiences of marginalized communities into public discussion. The main idea of Dalit literary theory is that literature should expose caste oppression, challenge social inequality, and give voice to those who have historically been silenced. One of the most influential figures is B.R. Ambedkar. Although primarily known as a social reformer and constitutional thinker, his ideas inspired generations of Dalit writers to fight for equality and justice. Sharan Kumar Limbale played a key role in defining Dalit literature and argued that it should represent the lived experiences of oppressed communities. Om Prakash Valmiki is known for his powerful writings that reveal the realities of caste-based discrimination and social exclusion. Kancha Elia Shepherd has written extensively on caste, identity, and social justice, highlighting the perspectives and contributions of marginalized groups. In short, Dalit literary theory examines how literature exposes caste oppression, promotes social awareness, and amplifies the voices and experiences of marginalized communities. Let's dive into postmodernism. Postmodernism emerged between the 1960s and 1980s as a reaction against the belief that there is one universal truth or a single way of understanding the world. The central idea of postmodernism is that truth is fragmented, unstable, and often shaped by language, culture, and media. Instead of accepting grand explanations, postmodern thinkers encourage us to question established beliefs and multiple versions of reality. One of the key thinkers was Jean-Francois Lyotard. He argued that people should be skeptical of grand narratives, large theories that claim to explain everything. Ian Baudrillard explored the influence of media and suggested that modern society is often dominated by simulations and images that can seem more real than reality itself. Frederick Jameson examined postmodernism as a cultural condition linked to late capitalism and globalization. Ihab Hassan helped define the characteristics of postmodern literature such as fragmentation, ambiguity, experimentation, and playfulness. To sum up, postmodernism challenges the idea of absolute truth and emphasizes that reality, meaning, and knowledge are often shaped by language, media, and cultural perspectives. Let's turn our attention to vulnerability studies. This field developed between the 1960s and 1980s as scholars became increasingly interested in understanding why some individuals and communities are more exposed to harm than others. The central idea of vulnerability studies is that vulnerability is not simply a personal weakness. Instead, it is often shaped by social, political, economic, and environmental conditions that make certain groups more susceptible to disasters, inequality, climate change, or other forms of harm. One of the key thinkers is Martha Albertson Feynman. She argues that vulnerability is a universal human condition, but social institutions play a major role in determining how people experience it. Ben Wisner has focused on disasters and shown how poverty, inequality, and a lack of resources can increase vulnerability to natural hazards. Judith Butler explores vulnerability in relation to identity, power, and human interdependence, emphasizing how social structures affect people's lives. Pramod K. Nair has applied these ideas to literary and cultural studies, examining how texts represent vulnerable individuals and communities. To sum up, vulnerability studies investigates how social, political, and economic conditions create unequal exposure to harm and how literature, culture, and society respond to vulnerable lives and communities. Another important approach is adaptation appropriation theory. Let's first understand what is adaptation and what is appropriation. Adaptation is the creative transposition of a source text into a new medium or cultural context, like turning a novel into a film, while appropriation is the critical reworking or borrowing of elements from one existing work to make a new, distinct cultural product. Take an example of famous novel Pride and Prejudice, written by Miss Jane Austen. The novel was beautifully adapted into 1995 series. Then, in 2005, the novel was adapted into a full-length movie. But in 2004, the novel was appropriated into a Bollywood film named Bride and Prejudice. And in 2016, there was another appropriation called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. So, adaptation and appropriation theory developed between the 1960s and 1990s and focuses on how stories change when they move across different media, cultures, and historical periods. The central idea of adaptation appropriation theory is that texts are not fixed. A novel can become a film, a play can be turned into a television series, or an old story can be reimagined for a new audience. These transformations often create new meanings while still connecting to the original work. One of the leading scholars in this field is Linda Hutcheon. She argued that adaptations should be viewed as creative works in their own right, not simply as copies of the original. Julie Sanders distinguished between adaptation and appropriation, showing how some works closely follow the source text while others radically transform it. Deborah Cartmel has extensively studied literary adaptations in film and examined how classic texts are brought to modern audiences. Robert Stam challenged the idea that adaptations should be judged only by their faithfulness to the original, emphasizing the creative possibilities of transformation. To sum up, adaptation appropriation theory examines how texts are transformed and reimagined across different media, cultures, and time periods, creating new interpretations and meanings. Let's continue with rubbish theory. Rubbish theory emerged in the 1970s and explores how the value of objects change over time. It challenges the idea that things are permanently valuable or worthless. The central idea of rubbish theory is that an object considered useless or rubbish today may become valuable in the future because of social, cultural, or historical changes. In other words, value is not fixed, it is created by society. The most important thinker in this field is Michael Thompson, who developed rubbish theory and argued that objects can move between being valuable, worthless, and valuable again. Joshua or Reno studied waste and disposal practices, examining how societies manage and assign meaning to discarded objects. Mary Douglas contributed to the understanding of how societies classify and define things as waste, dirt, or rubbish, showing that things categories are often socially constructed. Michael Farr explored the cultural and artistic significance of everyday objects, including those that are often overlooked or considered worthless. To sum up, rubbish theory shows that value is not permanent. Through social and cultural processes, objects that seem worthless can gain new meaning and become valuable again. Now let's discuss post-colonial theory, a critical approach that emerged in the 1970s and 1980s and reshaped the way scholars understand literature, history, and cultural identity. The central idea of post-colonial theory is that literature reflects the effects of colonialism, empire, and cultural domination. It focuses on how colonial powers not only controlled land and economy but also influenced language, identity, culture, and ways of thinking. Post-colonial theorists examine how texts represent the relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. They show how colonial rule created ideas of superiority and inferiority, and how these ideas continued even after independence in many societies. As a result, post-colonial literature often deals with themes like identity crisis, cultural conflict, resistance, and the search for selfhood. One of the most influential thinkers is Edward Wadi Said, who introduced the concept of Orientalism, explaining how the West constructed a biased image of the East. Franz Omar Fanon analyzed the psychological impact of colonial oppression on colonized people. Gayatri Chakrabarty Spivak questioned whether the marginalized or subaltern can truly speak or be heard within dominant systems. Homi Kharshed Bhabha explored ideas like hybridity and cultural in-betweenness, showing how identities become mixed in post-colonial societies. In short, post-colonial theory helps us understand how literature reflects power, dominations, resistance, and the complex identity formations that arise in the aftermath of colonial rule. Let's take a look at animal studies. Animal studies emerged in the 1970s as scholars began questioning the traditional view that humans are completely separate from or superior to animals. The central idea of animal studies is that literature can help us understand the complex relationships between humans and animals. It examines how animals are represented in texts and what these representations reveal about culture, ethics, identity, and power. One of the key thinkers is Jacques Derrida, who challenged the way humans define themselves in opposition to animals and questioned the boundaries between these two. Donna Haraway explored the close connections between humans and animals, arguing that they shape each other's lives in important ways. Carrie Wolf helped develop animal studies as an academic field and encouraged scholars to rethink human centered perspectives. Peter Singer focused on animal ethics and argued that animals deserve moral considerations because they can experience suffering. To sum up, animal studies examines how literature represents animals and explores the ethical, cultural, and philosophical relationships between humans and the non human world.